Cindy, thank you for joining me today. Cindy has spent more than 3 decades at Deloitte. The last half as a senior managing director. She built her career at a rare intersection of commercial healthcare, government healthcare, and management consulting. In her market, that combination makes her what I call a purple unicorn, which I love. When she stepped away from Deloitte, she wasn't sure what the next chapter would look like. So she got clear on it, clear enough to turn down a real offer without another one in hand. And she landed her next opportunity in exactly the right role. And this is how she got there. So, Cindy, thank you for taking the time to talk with me today.
Well, thanks, Selena. I appreciate it. I'm excited to be here.
So, 30 plus years at Deloitte, the last half as a senior managing director. Describe who you were professionally. What did success look like from the inside, and what began to shift for you?
Yeah. So, I would say I describe myself as a healthcare consultant, right? And that's who I've been, that's who I am at heart, that's who I will continue to be. And I would say, that model, the model of success that sort of drove me, really I look at it in sort of five pieces. So it was learn as much as you can about whatever topic you're interested in, grow yourself in the business, like translate that learning into sales, share that experience, grow and train others, right? So that you're building sort of the base to deliver your work, figure out what comes next, and then reinvent yourself as needed. So always be kind of looking ahead. And I love doing that. And I did it in commercial. I learned as much as I could from the large clients that we were serving, which were the giants in the industry across the US. I worked with some of the most thought leading healthcare consultants in the country at the time, which was awesome. And then I had the chance to bring my experience over to our federal practice to actually help grow and build a couple of accounts there, which was wonderful. And I was successful in doing that and growing our staff and trying to kind of teach them how commercial and federal intersect. And then I had the chance to really step in front of a large opportunity to really do healthcare transformation through health IT, which was just another time that I had reinvented myself. And that's kind of where I spent the last really 15 years, was trying to focus on how to grow that market and how to grow our presence in that market, and then how to grow my own knowledge and experience in that market. And eventually, there were a lot of changes that happened along the way, a ton of changes that happened along the way. Probably the two biggest or three biggest were, COVID, which really changed the way that you sell and the work that we could do on site, and, how kind of affected how transformation would happen for a little while. And then AI, right, which was sort of kind of came swooping in, and all of a sudden, there was a reinvention that had to happen because this technology was going in place and it was awesome, but there was so much more that could be done and so many dots that could be connected. And so I really started to think about, okay, there's going to have to be another reinvention that's going to have to happen, probably faster than, anything else had happened in the past. And where did I want to do that? Like, did I still feel like I had the opportunity to grow where I was, or was it time for me after so many years, to kind of challenge myself in a new way and look outside and see if I could continue to grow and build this business sort of outside of where I was. And so that's what I decided to do. And it was a little bit scary. Sure.
So, what did people see when they looked at your career from outside Deloitte and outside your clients?
Yeah. So, I mean, I would say that from looking from the outside, I would say that they saw somebody who understood the industry. I think that's what I was known for, and that who understood the transformation taking place and could really help adapt solutions to client specific needs. So it wasn't sort of I wasn't bringing in pre-formatted ideas or thoughts. Like, it was really sort of working side by side with them to figure out what the solutions were that were right. And that's, if I think if you ask my clients and you ask the people that I work with, that's what they would say. It was a personalized set of recommendations based on my knowledge, my experience, the experience of the firm, and the other people that I would pull in to develop a collaborative solution that worked for the clients. And that's what I would say I was known for.
I'm just going to go back to the shift, right? Because there were a couple things that I heard there with regards to like reinvention and change, like
Yeah.
COVID and then AI. Was there anything else like that was just coming up for you? You had spent more than 30 years at Deloitte.
Yeah.
What was coming up about that shift to inspire a change?
I think there were a few things. There were a lot of people that I worked with at Deloitte that had retired, had left, whatever. And of course, that got you starting to think about, okay, well, what does my chapter two look like, right? And retirement was looming, like it was there, and I was ready. I mean, that's one thing that I had thought about. We had planned for it, and but I wasn't quite sure I was there quite yet, right? And so I think it was just sort of that, can I do this elsewhere? Like it was almost a personal challenge to me to say, okay, I've done this. I've done as much as I can here. I want to do it elsewhere, and I want to be able to train and empower a new generation of staff, a new generation of people, to kind of take my knowledge and expertise and be able to go forward with it when I'm not in the workforce anymore. But how can I make an impact fast? And can I do that elsewhere? If I've done it already here, I want to be able to see if I can do it elsewhere. So it was almost a personal challenge. I guess that's probably the way I would frame it. That I just needed to see if I could do something different before I made the decision that I was done in the workforce 100%.
Were you also talking about that legacy, right?
Yeah.
Like of really empowering that next generation. And that was one of the things that, I mean, I just like that right away of you didn't want to hold and gatekeep all of this. You wanted to train
Right.
everybody up and you wanted to pass all this information along.
Yes.
Um, and also take that knowledge from one place to another. During your search, you were having conversations across advisory roles, startups, consulting, big tech. Were you staying open to everyone or were you getting specific?
So at the beginning, I was 100% staying open to everyone, mainly because I really didn't know exactly what I wanted to do. Like there's when you leave consulting, especially after so many years that I had been there, there's so many opportunities and you just don't know how to shift through them. And so when people would ask me, what do you want to do? I couldn't answer the question because I would go off on 500 different tangents because I like doing everything. And so at the beginning, I was really, when I was doing my own networking and I was having my own discussions with people that were in my Rolodex and had been there for years, you know, I was really open to understanding their perspectives on where they thought I could make an impact, right? Because impact was sort of my driver. And so I wanted to explore things that weren't traditional consulting. I wanted to explore things that probably had some aspects of traditional consulting. And then I wanted to explore totally new things. Teaching, right? Teaching was another area that I went off on. So at the beginning, I absolutely did not narrow my focus. And because I felt like had been in a bubble for so long that I just wanted to really understand what was out there and where I could fit in. And that sounds weird, right? Because you're coming from sort of a senior executive role, but you leave this place of comfort, and all of a sudden it's kind of like, okay, now I've got everything available to me. How do I choose? That was the hard thing to try and figure out is how do you know what you want to do?
And the thing I loved about how you approached all of these conversations, Cindy, is that you really came at it from an executive thought partner to every single conversation you have. You brought ideas even when nothing was official. So, where did that come from? Where did that instinct come from?
That came from 30 years of consulting. Like that is, and I do it with my family and it drives them crazy too. You have to have a solution for everything. Like you can't walk away from a conversation without offering a solution. And I've always felt that way. Or at least, brainstorming on solutioning. And so it was just sort of a natural thing when I was having conversations with people and they would throw out opportunities or they would throw things there was something that I knew of that I thought they should look into. It's just sort of a natural thing to offer it. And it was also being helpful, right, to them, or what I thought was being helpful to them was just, it's something that comes naturally to me because I like it when people do it to me. So I think it was just the ability to have that dynamic relationship and have the conversation and being able to contribute. Like that was the way that I kind of felt like I was contributing to their knowledge, their success, and at the same while having sort of a discussion around where I can make an impact as well. So it was just kind of a natural thing that happened. It was the right thing to do, and that's the kind of conversation that I love to have.
So during this search and during all of these conversations, what became more important than you expected going in? And then what became less important? And what did you stop chasing?
I guess I'll break it up into a couple different pieces. Like when I first started searching, what was important for me was to maintain my networking relationships. So I treated every day, right, as a job. Like I had it in the morning where I figured out who I was going to reach out to. I was going to respond to emails. I was going to go to meetings with them, lunches, dinners, coffee, whatever. And then I was going to come back in the afternoon, do more research, figure out, if I owed them something, send them stuff. So, I mean, it was almost like a full-time job. And I treated the meetings that I had with those, in my network. And by the way, everybody was incredibly accommodating. Like I sent emails out to everybody saying, "Hey, I'm leaving and I'd love to have a conversation with you." But it wasn't a conversation about a job, right? It wasn't asking for a job. It was really looking for, what are you seeing in the industry that's coming down the line? What do you think is important as a business leader? And where could I make an impact? Like, if my experience, where could I make an impact? And those discussions, that was kind of a fun thing, because it was obviously, you don't have those kinds of discussions when you're, at least I didn't never had those discussions when I was a consultant, right? But having sort of that external perspective on where you can make a difference really helps you open your eyes to things that you probably haven't even thought about. And those connections, and I think honestly, not going in there saying, "Hey, do you have a job for me?" Which is not what I ever wanted to do anyway, because I didn't know what I wanted. I just kind of wanted to get, my thoughts moving. Really, in the end, is what helped me figure out what I wanted to do, because um, there were things that people directed me to, where they had, my network had other people in their network that were looking for jobs or looking for specific people. And so I was connected through recruiters and, others who were actually, interviewed me for jobs that way. And it became, there were some things that I could cross off my list pretty, in the beginning pretty clearly, because I knew I didn't want to do that kind of work, whether, and it was a variety of things, right? It was just a variety of work that I wasn't really, I knew I didn't want to do. And so it helped give me clarity that I wanted to stay in healthcare, that 100%, and I kind of knew that from the beginning, that was sort of an unchangeable thing. It did give me clarity that I could have a pretty big impact pretty quickly in the federal space. And so I wanted to stay there. And I think it also helped give me clarity that while there were tons of opportunities to get in and help grow and expand businesses in the federal space, what really drew me and what really kind of got me going in the morning was transformation. Like, where could I make an impact and and do transformative work, and not necessarily all the stuff around it, right? That required different skills that I could certainly do and I had done in the past, but my passion was getting in, working with clients, doing transformation, really trying to figure out, how do you get new technologies, AI, et cetera, into their environment, and just help them become more efficient, more effective, different kinds of healthcare companies. And so that drove my interest. I think it kind of helped me narrow my focus to the type of companies I was looking at, and to the type of, to the size of business that I wanted to be in.
And was there anything surprising about the search process that surprised you? Um, yeah.
Um, so no, I mean, well, I hadn't done it in 35 years, so that was a big surprise, like, just in general. But I think I probably I wasn't sure what I was going to expect in terms of timing, right? And it's a different perspective. Like, when you are the person that's outside of the company looking in, It's a very different, it's hugely different than if you're the one in the company that's kind of looking out for people. So I know when we recruited, right, and when I was in that position and having to look for people, there were 500 other things that were drawing my attention and taking it away. And, and gosh, at 6:30 or 7:30 at night, I'd finally say, oh, look, here's the resume that I was supposed to look at 11 hours ago. And, you kind of lose that perspective when you're the one that's trying to get into something, or that wants, to be able to talk to a recruiter, or wants to be able to have access to, to folks to speak to them. And so that was just it was a different way of looking at it. Like I had to practice my patience, as I would say to my kids when they were younger. And really just sort of learn, you're not the priority. Like in some cases you will be, at the end you will be the priority, but going through the process, you're not the priority. You're a number. Even if you're referred in by people that know you, you're still not a priority. And so that was weird, I would say. And I would say that, um, again, making sure that you can concisely describe your experience after 35 years in a way that people won't stop listening halfway through, which I'm notoriously guilty of doing, I think was a big one for me. I really had to get clarity on what I wanted so I could be direct and know what I was looking for.
So during this search and during all of these conversations, what became more important than you expected going in? And then what became less important? And what did you stop chasing?
That's one of the most important things that I think, anybody that is thinking of switching positions, especially at an executive level, can do, is just to make sure that you are nurturing those networks and growing them, and and not being shy to reach out to people. Like there were several that I reached out to that I had maybe talked to one or two times, who I was like, well, they're in an interesting position. I want to understand how they got there, or I want to really understand, what their, kind of what their motivation was, or how they transitioned in after they left the company that they were with for so long. And so every person was a little bit of a different perspective on what I was going through. And every single one of them was willing to share. Like, and there was not even a hesitation. They're like, yeah, can you meet Friday? Or yeah, can you meet Thursday? And that was fun. I mean, it was fun getting to connect with all these people again, and and having to have just different non-business conversations with them that were a little bit more personal in nature. And I wouldn't have traded that for anything. That was a great experience. Fantastic.
You got an offer, your first offer was from a
Right.
startup,
Right.
or a um, venture
Company.
backed company. Yeah. So you said no. So
Right.
walk me through like why it didn't work for you.
Yeah. And I'll tell you, that was a fun experience. Again, everything was great about this, right? Looking back on it now, the people were lovely. I mean, they were knowledgeable. They were incredible business people. The position was awesome. And they afforded me the time to really take my time to look, to do my due diligence and to talk to others. And they opened the kimono and gave me their, everything that they could have, just so I had all of the information to be able to understand what the position was really like. And there was always something that I couldn't quite put my finger on, that was was not quite right, and I couldn't figure out what it was until the very end, right? Again, they were more than generous with giving me enough time to kind of do the due diligence. But in the end, what I had to go with was I could do what they wanted me to do, which was to grow up, and expand their federal health practice, and it was great, and it would have been so much fun, it's something I could have done because I had done it before, but it wasn't what I wanted. It wasn't what my heart wanted to do. And I figured this time around, I don't know how many years I have till I retire, but it's not going to be decades, right? It's not going to be 30. And so I really felt like I needed to do what was going to make my heart happy. And that was really focus on healthcare delivery, healthcare transformation, healthcare IT. And while that would have been a part of this, it would not have been a big enough part to kind of keep me going. And I knew I couldn't put my heart fully into that position, and it wouldn't have been fair to the company. And so I said no. And that was, it was hard because I think I knew I could have done the job, but it wasn't necessarily what I wanted to do full time.
At the time, you didn't have another offer in hand. You were talking
Correct.
to other companies for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
So where did the, confidence come from to turn it down when you didn't have another
I
offer?
think I'm fortunate in that, retirement was always on the table, right? And so I wasn't finding another job because I have to find another job. I was finding another job because I wanted to find a place that I could make an impact because I didn't feel done. I think that's the way you put it. And I couldn't figure it out at first, but that was it. It's like I just didn't feel ready to not do anything. And so the confidence came from knowing, finally getting clarity, and I think that whole turning down that job gave me a lot of clarity. Um, and I think knowing that I wanted to try and find that, like I wanted to wait until the right thing came along, even if it was years out, right? I thought it would be, I knew that there were other opportunities out there that were still worth exploring, and I just probably needed to ramp up the discussions. Um, but I didn't have to take something that wasn't 100% right. And so I was very fortunate to be in that position where I could give myself a little more time to look for the right thing.
The thing that I love also about this first one that you said no to is that you left that relationship intact with the CEO, with the recruiter, like with the whole hiring team. You kept bringing ideas, staying that thought partner, even after saying no to them two times.
I mean, to me, that's just the way I operate, right? Like I really I thought the world of the company. I think they're a good company. I think they're going to go far. I just don't think I was the right fit for them. And so, I wanted to try and leave them if I could with some, and it wasn't a big thing, but it was just something I noticed that maybe wasn't on their pipeline or something that, that I thought they should look into. And so I wanted to make sure that they knew that. There was no reason for me not to say that. And so again, I don't know if that's just the way I operate or if it's from years and years of consulting experience, but it was the right thing to do. So I hope they do well. I hope they go after it.
Once you did have this offer in hand, there was another company, well, a couple companies you were far along with,
Yeah. Yeah.
and you use that to help push these additional conversations forward.
Yeah.
So, talk to me about how you thought about that.
Yeah. So um that was difficult. Again, like, not having been in the market really for 35 years, it was tough to have those discussions and to figure out what to say. But so I had multiple companies that I was pretty far along with. And I kind of went through the ones that were most aligned to what I wanted to do. And I reached back out to the recruiters and others that I had already talked to in the company, because by this time, I mean, I had been having conversations with some of them for 8 to 10 months, right? But we were always sort of talking, and they would call me when something would come up and, say, hey, we're still interested. We're just looking for the right position, or we're reorganizing, and, just hang tight. And so I did, reach out to them and say, I just want to let you know I have another offer in hand. Um, but, are you interested in having another discussion? I do have to make a decision on this, but I would love to explore with you sort of, kind of where we are in the process, just to see if there's a possibility of extending the discussions. And so, the ones that I hoped would respond did respond, and they all had, more interviews set up. They were able to get me on the books with their leadership very quickly. And through those discussions, I figured out which companies were kind of further along the process, I guess, and more serious about bringing me in than some of the other ones were. And so I narrowed it down to two. And then of those two, one of them was very accommodating with getting me on schedules all within a week with their senior leadership. And their senior leadership went out of their way to talk to me. And I just really felt like it could be a great, place to thrive. And so that's the one I ended up going with. And
Talk to me because it wasn't just getting in and talking to the senior leadership. There was a
correct.
lot more to it. I just want to hear a little bit more about what made that the right, where you've landed, right? Like that was
Yeah.
the right decision?
I think it was the willingness of them to work with me. They came back. I mean, the package that they came back with was an exceptional package, from an offer perspective, that, was very close to what I came away with, in my previous position. That was good. But I think the other thing too was, and that was a big factor. It's not something that we've really talked about a lot here, but of course, when it comes down to it, compensation helps, right? But I think that, this was more of a match around, we were on the phone talking about where I could make an impact immediately. Where could I jump in? Like, where would I be able to hit the ground running, and just be able to make a difference and make an impact from day one. And I didn't see that in any other company, and that was really important to me. And being able to step into a role where I'm comfortable, that is something that I love to do with junior staff who I'm excited to meet and potentially train up. It just sounded like the right, the place where I could thrive. And I think the leadership was, again, like the conversations that we had with them, to me, it was very natural. You felt connected. And I'm just excited to see what's going to happen. So we'll see.
So, what do you know now that you couldn't have known when you first stepped away from Deloitte?
Um, I mean, I would say, don't undersell yourself. That's probably the biggest thing, right? And that is by far the biggest thing. And I think that, there's so much out there. Like, take the time to really figure out what you want to do next. And that's the most important thing. Like, coming from very intense, corporate environment, there's so much that you can do. Like, I don't think I fully realized, how valuable the experience was that I got at Deloitte. And it sounds stupid to say, but I don't think I really realized like how far it could extend, right? Because my focus was on, let's sell this kind of work, let's get these kind of projects, let's train these people, let's grow new partners. Like, it was all just almost tunnel vision. And I didn't really realize that until the last couple of years that I was there. And but I think when you get out, you're sort of like, okay, that's what I've been doing forever. Like, what else is there? And then you start talking to people and you realize that there's so much that you could do. And there's almost too much that you could do, that you kind of have to know where to focus so that you get what you want out of it. And you're not just going to go into the next thing that is just like what you left, or that is going to be less than what you want because you didn't know what you wanted when you came out, right? And several of the people that I talked to in my network were all like, you have to know, you got to get clarity on what it is that you're asking for, because otherwise you're going to go in and 12 months from now, you're going to be doing the same thing, or 6 months from now, you're going to be doing the same thing because you're not going to be happy. And I don't know, I don't want to do it again for a while. Like, it doesn't necessarily have to be 30 years, but I think that getting clarity is the biggest thing, that this process brought. And I would say, there is a sense of urgency that you have an expiration date. That's, again, it's something that's hard to hear, but your experience, your network, your connections, they all disappear in probably 12 months. And so if even that long, maybe shorter if there's a change in administration. So you can't squander the time. Like, you have to treat this job search as a full-time job. And whether, or at least, until you get sort of established, it's got to be something that's your focus. And I was not ready for that at all.
What else did you learn about yourself throughout this whole search that you didn't expect?
I think the probably one of the biggest things is that the network that I have is really supportive. And it is much more like, even just from a personal perspective, like, I treat all of these guys and gals and network connections as business relationships because that's what they were. But some of them have grown into be just true friends. I have a client, former client, that I talk to now that I go out to lunch with frequently, who has become like one of my good friends, right? And like her friends are now like we just have a social circle that we didn't have before. And um, so I think that I didn't really I understood the importance of networking from a business perspective. I didn't really understand the importance of networking on a personal level and how much they would really play into it. And I will tell you honestly that the networking is what's interesting, um, because it was a connection of a connection that ended up really getting me into where I am right now. I did not know anyone, believe it or not, and I know you know where I'm going, and I did not know anyone where in the position that I'm going into, and so it was a connection of a connection that suggested that they talk to me, and I think that's fascinating. So I would never underestimate that power, and maybe a lot of the corporate level folks already know that. I knew it, but I didn't understand it until you actually have to live it.
And what would you tell another senior leader who's sitting with an offer that's good enough but not right without anything else in hand?
If it's not perfect, if it's not going to make you excited to go in every day, if it's not going to get you the experience that you as a senior leader want to have, especially if you're later in your career, don't take it. Like, wait, just be patient. The right one will come along, and make sure whatever you're doing is going to be your sweet spot and it will help the company. Obviously, they think it will. They've given you an offer, but make sure it's what you want to do because that's so important. And at this point in your career, you don't have to, you don't have to have a job. You can choose what you want to do. And I think that's been one of the most interesting things too, is being able to choose and not having to do something that maybe I don't, that maybe I don't want to do.
What was it like working with me throughout this process? Like, what surprised you? And is there something you'd point another leader toward?
Oh yeah. So, and I'm not just saying this because you're on the other screen, right? Like, so I would say it was invaluable. Like you came from a recruiter, a senior level recruiting, position, right? That was invaluable because every aspect of this, I think you were able to help me interpret sort of what was going to happen next, why things were taking so long, what the core, if certain things happened in the conversation, what did that mean? When I was ready to throw in the towel, you were able to say, hold on, like that's kind of what you expect. The timing of everything was definitely something that I didn't know what to expect or how long to expect. And you had it down to a T. And every single thing that happened was really on the timeline that you said it was going to happen on. And, down to, well, nothing's going to happen. It's Memorial Day. Nothing's going to happen now. It's the 4th of July holiday. Like it was to a T. So I think having somebody that can interpret that, especially for someone who's been in a position for a long period of time was incredibly helpful. I think that, I had started working with another transition coach, if you will, and I really felt like everything was standardized, right? I was taking standardized personality tests, I was taking standardized interest tests, and with you, I felt like you were just as invested in what comes out of this whole thing as I was, and so it was much more of a personalized approach to, you know, to to finding what was right for me and helping me figure out how to position myself and how to change my LinkedIn profile, which was a huge thing, and how to shorten my 400-page resume to something that was manageable, and how to talk about what I want, and that was all just personalized stuff that I never would have gotten elsewhere, and I'm very grateful for that. So I would 100% direct anybody, that wants to change a career, that wants to change a position within their own company, that wants to just improve their social profile, like go to Selena. That's what I would say.
What does success mean today versus what it meant before?
I think for me now, success is going to be again, it goes back to making an impact. So for me, making an impact quickly, whatever that means, right? So whether that means selling new work, whether that means managing a project, whether that means getting back in front of a client, like success for me is just getting in and making an immediate impact. I'm not going to take 3 months, 2 months, whatever to figure it out. Like I know it, and I know how the industry works. I know how these clients work. I want to be able to get in there and start just directly impacting the company as soon as I possibly can. And I think the other thing too for me now is success is going to be me feeling like I am teaching the next generation, what's worked for me, like what's been successful, what has helped propel me to where I am in my career, and and just being able to have the opportunity to do that is a great privilege, and I look forward to that. So to me, that's what success is: quick impact and passing things along.
I love it. I love it. I love it. I just want to thank you for your time today. This was like fabulous. I can't wait to share all of this with so many people. You've been like an incredible client. I've enjoyed working with you and seeing the whole journey, right? And I'm really excited for this next, your next chapter here that starts.